to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. Are you a goofball that loves Giants football? If so, sit back and relax as we talk about the team that both excites and frustrates us so much. And now, here are your goofball hosts, Drew and Rob.
Welcome, fellow goofballs, to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. I am Drew, joined as always by...
me, Rob. How you doing today, Mr. Drew?
I'm doing good, but today is not today.
No.
Today is not. Oh, yes. So we did have to do a little bit of a difference here this week because, oh, yes, today is the Valentine's Day. So, I wanted to stay married. So I thought it'd be a good day for us to have a pre-recorded episode. So currently, as this is going, I'm probably eating some kind of fancy meal over at a nice fancy restaurant on the water that I have booked for tomorrow. And since today is Valentine's Day, guess what? It's not a holiday without what? A custom background. Oh, yes. We're going the custom background style. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Hope you're all enjoying. Yes, and we're gonna give you guys our next in our series here of state of the team here, going over all the wide receivers here at the New York Football Giants here, because this has been an issue for some years now. The position, it's like we talk about O-line, but let's be honest here. If we're talking about one of the worst groups that we've had the last few years, it's wide receiver. And if you don't think that, then let me introduce you to the Football Giants here, because I think you've been watching the San Francisco Giants and don't understand what's going on, because
they definitely have wide receivers on the San Francisco Giants.
I don't know. I don't watch baseball. Sheesh. No time for baseball. Only time for one sport, football. No, in all fairness, I used to love baseball. I used to love it. But I haven't watched it in years. But let's go over the wide receivers here, because this is a group that we had a lot of expectations this year going into. We really did. There's a lot of expectations. We didn't go into last season going, great, we're going to have some great receivers here. We're hoping to kind of piecemeal things together, and Kenny Golladay might do something. Kadarius Toney might do something. This year, though, we were like, okay, wow, we added all these receivers, and once again, the man on top, the man, the myth, the legend, one of the most underappreciated Giants of all time, and I'll say it that way, point blank, Darius Slayton, who for some reason, some Giant fans, I'm not going to say all by any means, I'm sure there's a lot of people that appreciate what Slayton do, but there's some Giant fans, a certain group that just wants to always get rid of and replace him. It seems like the coaching and GM always wants to get rid of him, but there he always is on top of the leaderboard for yards every single year, it seems like. Darius Slayton, once again, our top receiver this year, 17 games, 50 receptions, 770 yards, 4 touchdowns. And I think the biggest thing that people are not pointing out enough with him is the biggest issue with Slayton was his drops. He didn't have that problem this year. There wasn't games that I'm like, oh my God, we could have had this huge catch, but Darius Slayton, Butterfingers himself, dropped the ball. That didn't happen this year.
And also, to be a troll, if you will, to be devil's advocate here, he also did not see as many attempts.
This is a gnome. You're a troll.
No, exactly.
Gnome troll. Okay.
But I'm just saying,
also a gnome there and there, surrounded by gnomes.
It's not like he had great quarterback play to throw him the ball as much as he's seen it.
No, but I mean, he still had almost 800 yards.
You have to give him credit. He's had
out of a Darius Slayton season.
All your long passes was him, and I think maybe Wan'Dale had one, but we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean, again, another season that he just did his thing. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Darius Slayton should not be a number one wide receiver. And I mean that with respect to what Slayton does. he is not the best receiver on a winning team. He's a legit receiver on a winning team. He's like your third guy maybe on a winning team. But he's been forced into this wide receiver one role for most of his career for lack of better options. So think about it. If you are a person who's, on the coaching staff or on the defense of a team that's facing the Giants, besides Barkley, obviously, who obviously most teams want to stop, you're looking at Darius Slayton as a guy I need to stop.
Pretty much.
And he consistently goes over 700 yards a season. And I really think that if you brought in a dynamic offense with this man and had him as the third receiver, he would probably still get 700 yards receiving.
He may increase his average. Like one of those really top. Like if he goes, so to say, hypothetically, he goes out to LA, becomes a Charger, or heck,
whoa. Never getting rid of the guy?
I'm just saying. Or goes over to the Chiefs. Like he definitely has way more than 800 yards.
To me, like I said, I think it's not fair because people look at him as like, oh, this is your wide receiver one. Like, no, it's not. It's just that's the role he's had to take. It's the role he's had to take. I mean, you tell me, this is probably the best draft pick we had in the last 10 years. And I don't mean that like he's the best player, but the best value. I mean, this has been a legit good Giant that I think people are overlooking. I feel like depending on how long he stays with us, history is going to show him to be better than what people think of him currently. I mean, you look, he's now 5 years in with the Giants, and he's got 3,300 yards. If he has a couple of good, more seasons here, you're talking about a guy who's going to start going into, the top Giants of all time. I mean, that's crazy to say, but there really hasn't been that many crazy high numbers. Amani Toomer is our all-time leader at 9,497. I don't think he's going to top that. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no.
But if you look at where Darius Slayton is, he's already number 21 on our list of most receiving yards. Only 20 players have had more receiving yards. You know who's right ahead of him? Plexico Burress, Bark Bavaro. Guys who didn't have long careers but had very impactful careers. But I'm telling you right now.
Was it 3 years? Or before you shot himself, or 2?
39 games is looks like, yeah. So I mean, probably right around 3 or 4. But I mean, if you look at him right now, 3,300 yards. Let's say it's another 7,000 yards, 700 yard season. Okay, let's say hypothetically, that's what he tends to average.
Yeah, 4,000.
He's going to become right in that top 15, and he's going to beat out Sterling Shepard. Yeah, he doesn't get nearly the love that Sterling Shepard gets. I don't quite get it.
Maybe because he's not banged up all the time.
I don't know. I mean, I get it. I get that part of it there. But he's a guy that, again, a couple more years, and he's a top 10 in receiving yards. That's all it takes is 2 more seasons. And he's a top 10 in receiving yards kind of guy. He'll beat out guys like Hakeem Nicks and Ike Hilliard and Victor Cruz and these kind of guys with 2 more healthy years. So just don't want to get too much of a rank. We want to talk about all the receivers, but I just want this man to get a little more respect from the fans for what he's done, because it's been legit, it's been nice, and it's a story that's overlooked because I think probably the drops early on, plus the frustrations because he shouldn't be our number 1 receiver. But that's not on him, guys. That's on Joe Shane. That's on Dave Gettleman.
Yeah, we talked about it in our early shows about that too. Like he's dropping McDrop drops and
dropping McDrop drops.
Yes. With what at that time 2,100 yards probably. Yeah,
I mean, again, it's what he is. It's what he is. second on our receivers, Wan'Dale Robinson, 15 games, 60 yards. 60 receptions, which was tops amongst the Giants there. 525 yards and 1 touchdown. For a guy coming off an ACL, I'll take it. If you're going to give me 500 yards, yeah, that means if you were healthy, you're probably 700, 800 yards, in my mind. Especially because that means he played the full. He has a couple more games under him and stuff like that because he would play the full season. So, I've said it on the show before, and I'll say it again. I think he will be our breakout player next year. I think he's going to be a 100-catch guy. I don't think he's going to be crazy on the stats on the yards. He's not necessarily greatest on yak at times, but ever so often he just does amazing plays. But he's a guy who will be a security blanket for Daniel Jones or whoever else is quarterback next year. Who knows who his quarterback is? We have no clue. But yeah, he's a guy that going forward, I expect to have, a good, experience watching him the next couple of years. I think he's going to grow into this position as he learns to be a true NFL receiver. Keep in mind, the guy was playing running back a couple of years ago in college. And
they try to utilize that too, because I was going to bring up how many times have they thrown the ball in the backfield, like on a quick lateral stuff, and he lost yards on the pass play. So
let the guy just be your slot receiver. Let him be a slot, a true slot. That's what he's there for. That's what he can do.
To play slots.
Exactly. Third up is our rookie here from this season, Jalen Hyatt, 17 games, 23 catches, 373 yards, no touchdowns. Still waiting for a first touchdown there. But, we talked about him in the draft. And I remember looking back, because I looked back mid-season to see what you and I had said exactly about him. We called him a one-trick pony. And we said, hopefully we don't get him because we think he's going to be drafted very high. And he's a one-trick pony. Well, he didn't get drafted very high. And I'm glad we got him because it's quite a trick. And I said that on the show. I remember saying that. I said it's a one trick. It's a great trick, but it's just one trick. Well, at a third round value, that's not bad. I'll take a one trick pony.
Yeah, with those, he averaged over 16 yards per catch. Yeah. So he's the guy. He's your yak guy. And
the big thing with him is just, is he going to develop to be anything more than just a deep threat?
I don't think so. I do think so. With the right play calls, with the right stuff going on. Like last year, I feel like this past year was probably not the best assessment since he was a rookie himself that had to play with 3 different quarterbacks and the toughest league in the NFL. So he found some him and Tyrod.
He was open a lot that did not get the ball. I thought there was a lot of missed opportunities with him. I just think that next year you're going to have guys going in with tape on him. And it's a little more difficult to just be that guy, You can't surprise people. They know what you are. They know how fast you are. So can you get some new routes? Can you make some moves to get open? We're going to see. He's got to develop into a true NFL receiver. And we said that going into it's going to take a year or two because Tennessee doesn't run a traditional NFL offense. They run a very college-specific offense. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see how he develops there. But I'm excited for the potential with him. That's for sure.
That is correct.
Next up, before we talked about the season how the roster was shaping, we talked about who we thought the biggest bust would be next year. This past year that just happened. Remember we said Isaiah Hodgins.
Yeah, you got a guy that's coming from Buffalo that was on the practice squad that was about to get cut. We pick him up, and he becomes like our top receiver last year. Just about just 7 games, right? 8 games with us, and just looked great. But he's not a fast guy. He's he's a strong receiver, but he's small.
Yep.
But he did.
And I don't mind having him as a depth piece. Don't get me wrong. People were acting as if he was going to be great, and he's not. That's not who he is. That's not his abilities.
Paint rust any color, still rust. That's just like you were saying with Hyatt. there wasn't probably that much tape on Isaiah Hodgins. If there was, it wasn't like you're like, huh, that's the guy that we're going to have to watch out for.
Yeah, exactly. So 17 games, 21 catches, 230 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So what's interesting is he was second on the team in touchdowns. He was still, like you said, that tall receivers. But yeah, again, a guy that I think I don't mind having on the team. I don't know what their plans are for him going forward, but to me, he's not a must keep bringing back. The other 3 guys you mentioned, we got to bring back. Got to bring back Slayton. Got to bring back Robinson. Got to bring back Hyatt. I'm 50-50 on Hodgins. Like if he's brought back, right. Yeah, I was about to say if he's brought back, I want him brought back in a position where we can go, you know what? We're going to bring him back, but we're going to hedge our bets and get him to be a guy that we can cut if need be, if he can't make that main roster, like we did with a lot of players like Crowder last year, like you bring so many bodies in and you kind of see what you got.
Yeah. And
he goes in that category, I think, next year. So next up was one of the guys we did bring in, and whoa, that did not work out.
What a lie.
Yeah.
This guy.
We talked about Hodgins being the big bust. Maybe this guy is even a bigger bust. I think the only reason I could say otherwise is because I don't think anybody expected him to be a number 1. People just expect him to be a 500, 600, 700 yard kind of guy.
You're supposed to be a guy 2.
Yeah, I mean, Paris Campbell, 12 games, was a healthy scratch for a lot of the games down the stretch. 20 receptions on the year, 104 yards, and also not a single touchdown.
Big old goose egg.
Fair to say he will not be back next year. Fair to say it didn't work out. But I'm telling you, I would not be shocked at all if it does work out somewhere else for him. And I don't mean 1,000-yard receiver kind of guy, but he'll be a guy who'll probably be, 400 to 600 yards somewhere else next year.
He should play like a Slayton somewhere else on a good team.
I don't even think that good. I really don't. I think he's more like a kind of like a season like Wan'Dale had this year. Kind of like that season. Legitimate slot receiver kind of guy, fast, speedy. Occasionally you have him running as a running back. It just didn't work out. And I think part of why it didn't work out is because we talked about in the preseason. For some reason, we kept getting these small guys who were these tweener kind of wide receivers. We just had too many of the same thing. I mean, Paris Campbell, Wan'Dale Robinson, and the guy we're going to talk about in a minute ago, all 3 of them kind of fit the same exact role. Only so many balls to be thrown to that one slot position, guys.
So many balls.
But again, Paris Campbell, he'll be back somewhere. That's not the Giants roster next year, that's for sure. Another guy we know we won't be a Giant here, Sterling Shepard, as much as we hate to say it here. 15 games, 10 receptions, 57 yards, and the 1 touchdown. I'd be shocked if somebody offered him a contract, to be honest, with any guaranteed money. But listen, the guy wants to play. He's earned the right to continue playing, even though I'm going to hate to see him in potentially another uniform. But we'll have to see what happens with him. But he's definitely not going to be a Giant next year. It's pretty far established there, unless there's some crazy injuries. I'll put it that way. On the Giants, with the Giants, you never can say. But that's on the season, guys. This is all of the 6 guys who caught a single reception from the wide receiver position, and their totals 184 yards. It feels like that. 184 receptions.
It's pretty much
2,059 yards and 9 touchdowns. There are multiple receivers who had more touchdowns as individuals than the Giants had in all their wide receivers. There are multiple 1-2 combos in this league that had more receiving yards and more catches than all of the Giants wide receivers put together. This was a pitiful group. Pitiful.
Yeah.
There's no talent there. What it's really missing is a number 1. That's what it's missing. It's missing a number 1. Take some of the, like we said, get Slayton off the best coverage guys and get him on the second and third. Make him look that much better. Get Wan'Dale Robinson open because you're not worried about him as much because he's not necessarily the receiving leader going forward. Get Jalen Hyatt open, because if you forget about him because you're worried about now 3 people in front of him, it makes a huge difference having that number 1. And that's what we're missing, guys. That's what we're missing as a number 1.
Yeah, and we talked about the offseason coming to this year, like it's supposed to be Waller, but
no. And we're not going to count on that. And I think we'll keep Waller. We'll talk about that in the next state of the team we do here. I think we'll keep him, but I think to continue looking at him as a potential number 1 is a little crazy at this point. Now, could he become a number 1 again? If he stays healthy, sure. His numbers aren't as bad as they were, but you can't continually hope on a guy who's been 3 years in a row not healthy to all of a sudden change and be healthy. So let's look at some guys that are available this offseason, and let's see what we think on them. Now, keep in mind, there's always guys also that pop up and trade that we don't know about too as well. That'll potentially pop up. So keep an eye on the rumor mill for that stuff there. I went off of PFF and went and said, look at theirs. I figured we've been stealing some of the rankings for corners and linemen here. So let's go ahead and take a look what we got here as far as options there. Their number 1 guy, I actually disagree with who their number 1 is, but their number 1 is T. Higgins. T. Higgins, 25 years old, 11 games last year, 42 receptions, 656 yards, 5 touchdowns. Now, T. Higgins is the biggest name that's going to be available, potentially, assuming he's not tagged. But I don't think he's the best of this group. I think part of what I look at with him is, okay, prior to this year, he had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons. And his rookie year even had 900 yards. But for most of his career, he's been number 2.
Yes.
He's been got the number 2 corners on him. He's got the number 2 defense.
Who does number 2 work for?
He's got Jamar Chase in front of him. If he goes somewhere else, there's no Jamar Chase, guys. And that's not to say he won't be a good receiver as a number 1. My concern is you're going to pay this guy as a number 1. And he's never been one.
Correct.
That's the concern. And if you can't see that concern, you got to understand it's there, because he's cracked 1,000 yards twice, guys, and never cracked 1,100 yards. He's never gotten more than 75 receptions in a season. He's never had double-digit touchdowns.
The coverage.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, like I said, and it's not me trying to be rude about it and knock the guy, because he very well could do it. But he also very well could not. And you have to look at that as a potential, that he's feasting on potential CB2s. And CB1s will be coming his way all year long if he goes somewhere else. Now,
a big difference.
I don't think they're going to let him go, though. I don't think he leaves. So, now, the next guy on the list is somebody who I think could potentially leave. I think they'd be stupid if they let him leave, but I'm hearing a lot more rumors about him being available potentially, and that's Michael Pittman Jr., 26 years old. Last year, 16 games, 109 receptions, 1,152 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's at 1,000 yards now, 2 of the last 3 seasons. And the one season he missed it, he barely missed it. So, yeah, this is a guy that I think that you look at as a guy who has been a number 1. Like, he's been a legit number 1. And what I mean by that is his numbers have been very close to Higgins, but he's been dealing with things that Higgins didn't deal with as far as the quarterback position. He's been dealing with guys like Matt Ryan, dealing with guys like Minshew, exactly.
Yeah, Matt Ryan on his way out.
Couple of games. Phillip Rivers on his way out as well. I mean, this is what he's been dealing with. It hasn't been ideal offenses like Higgins has been in. So what I like about that is twofold. 1, he's been a number 1. He still had success. 2, he's played with some really bad quarterbacks and he still succeeded. And I hate to say it this way, but guess what, guys? If he goes to the Giants, he may very well play with some really bad quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about it this way, last year the Colts were a laughing stock, right? 1,000 yards last year.
Yep.
Plus, you had JT over there as well. They're a run-heavy team. which grant they stepped away from early in the year. But Jeff Saturday comes over there, fixes back up. We'll run a heavy team. With a terrible quarterback throwing to you the ball, is still over 1,000 yards as being covered.
Last year he was the one season he barely missed 1,000 yards. I thought you meant like last season, like this past one. So you're talking 22.
Yes.
Okay, just for clarity. Yeah, 22, he just barely missed 1,000 yards,
and that was.
But he also had his second highest reception total. So,
and they were also like the 30th ranked offense.
Yeah, horrendous. So, he gets even a halfway decent quarterback, and he had 1,100 yards last year, probably.
Yeah.
So, but again, that's why I'm saying a guy that I think is perfectly fit for our team overall. Next up after that, we got Mike Evans, who I don't think Mike Evans is going anywhere, guys. This guy is to be a buck for life. But I got to include him because he's technically going to be a free agent. 17 games, 79 yards, 1,255. Sorry, I keep on saying 79 yards. 79 receptions, 1,255 yards, 13 touchdowns. Led the league in touchdowns, receiving touchdowns last year. He's 30 years old, though, guys, a little bit older. Prone to drops as well. It's one thing I can tell you from somebody who lives in the Tampa Bay area and watches a lot of their football as well. 10 seasons he's been in the league. Guess how many 1,000-yard receiving seasons he has?
Every single one.
10. 5 seasons more than 10 receptions, including 10 receiving touchdowns, including last year. He's as legit comes. Canton will call his name one day. But again, he is a guy that is getting a little older, a guy who's looking at the tail end of his career. He's been a buck for all 10 years. I don't see him leaving there whatsoever. So I don't want to talk too much about him.
Yeah, no.
Next up is an option that I really haven't heard anybody talk about, and that's Hollywood Marquise Brown. 26 years old. I thought he was older than that. He's been in the league forever. Right?
Yeah, I was going to say, did he get drafted out of high school? Like what?
like Pittman's the same age, and Higgins only 1 year younger, and it feels like he's already a couple of years in team wise there with the Cardinals after being a couple of years with the Ravens too. So last year, 14 games, 51 receptions. Hey, I said it right. 575 yards, 4 touchdowns. Had a 1,000-yard season back in 21 as well with Lamar Jackson, and having a 1,000-yard receiving season with Lamar Jackson at wide receiver is like finding a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow at that point. It's like no one does that. So he's a talented guy. Is he a legit number one is the question. And I think he's a low-end number one, high-end number two.
Yeah, that's fair to say, because, I mean, also last year's, like, once again, he was a Cardinal last year.
Yeah.
How many quarterbacks did they have? Like, they juggled around. Like, it was... Yeah. I mean, granted, you had the aeronautical engineer for your first half of the year.
Yeah,
Joshua Dobbs.
Yeah, that's part of what you got to look into that when you look at what he did. Is he did it with guys that weren't exactly, great quarterbacks. I mean, even you can say the beginning, Kyler Murray coming off his injury, is he really a great, player at that point?
Yeah.
I don't know if I could say that. Next up, a guy that I'm really intrigued by. And I would say besides Pittman, this is probably like my other guy that's like a 1A and a 1B kind of guy as far as who I would want for the Giants to pick up. I would say if I'm a betting man, but can't say that with this guy. Calvin Ridley, 29 years old. So he's got a little bit of he's got a couple of years on him there. But 17 games last year, 76 receptions, 1,016 yards, 8 touchdowns, has been over 1,000 yards 2 of the last 3 active seasons. And I have to say that way because obviously he skipped the 1 year because of gambling. So technically 2 out of the last 4, but 2 out of the last 3 active seasons he's had in the NFL. And what I like about him overall is you've seen him succeed now in 2 different offenses. And you can look at the 1,000 yards and go, okay, well, 1,000 yards, same as Michael Pittman. He's also 3 years older, which means he's going to be a cheaper option probably than Michael Pittman. I think Michael Pittman is going to be the top receiver to hit free agency potentially, depending on what happens with Higgins there. But I just don't think Higgins hits the free agent market. So you look though at what they got in Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a team that has some weapons, guys. This is not a team that's a bad offense. So you got 1,000 yards out of Ridley, but you had 963 with Ingram, 787 with Christian Kirk. You had another 476 with Travis Etienne, 321 with Zay Jones. This is not a team that had one weapon. They spread the ball out pretty decent there. And I look at it going, you know what? He was a number one, but he was a number one in a spread style offense that would kind of put the ball around to multiple options there, and he still got the 1,000 yards. I think in a good number one setting, I think this is a guy that legit can do some damage, especially when you consider the fact that he's a guy who took a year off. Now, the one thing I need to see from him improve is his catch percentage. So he's targeted 136 times last year, 76 receptions. That's a 56% catch rate. That's not very good. But I'm not going to sit there and pretend that I'm a Jaguars guy that's watched all these games and knows that it's all his fault. For all I know, they're just chucking the ball to him whenever Trevor Lawrence about to get hit. I don't know. But that's a pretty low percentage. Yeah. I'll put it that way. Seen worse. Okay. Like to see better. Now we kind of get into the second tier, guys. Now we're getting into the second tier because we're done with the guys that have that potential to be a number one, I think. And obviously, anybody can look like a number one in the right circumstance. So these are guys that are like, hey, if we can't get one of the big names, maybe this is some guys we look at. Because I do think we'll pick up a wide receiver potentially in free agency. I really do. And it all depends, obviously, on our draft plan. Because we'll talk about the draft guys in a minute here. But I think that they're going to look to get a guy in free agency and draft a guy. And then go with the big three we talked about there before.
And I actually wouldn't be surprised if it would be this guy as well.
He's an interesting candidate. It's Darnell Mooney. Darnell Mooney's just still 26 years old. Another guy feels like been playing forever. 15 games last year, 31 receptions, 414 yards, and 1 touchdown. He's partially so high in this list, though, because he had a 1,000-yard season back in 21. Again, the Bears' offense has been as inept as can be, almost as bad as ours the last few years. And he's also dealt with Justin Fields, who, let's be honest here, isn't the best thrower in the world.
Correct.
So, again, I don't think this is a guy that becomes a number one, but I think this is a guy who could easily be a solid number two in the right system.
Yeah, he's a high-end number two.
Yeah.
Maybe he could push towards the number one. In our offense, he would be, but be like a Darius Slayton kind of
by
situation.
Default.
Yeah.
Exactly. Next up, another guy who's been a Robin for quite a while and never had the chance to prove he could be a Batman per se because he's been, blocked by Stephon Diggs, and that's Gabriel Davis. 24 years old, so still very young, the youngest guy we're going to probably have on this list. I'm going to look the whole numbers to see, but I think he is the youngest guy we got here. 17 games last season, 45 receptions, 746 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Again, keep in mind, that's his number two. He hasn't been a number one. So again, we talked about that with Higgins. You got the question of can he transition from a 2 to a 1? Can he be that guy? Well, you know who might have a good idea? That is former offensive coordinator Brian Daboll. Correct.
I mean, the thing with Gabe Davis too, it's like he's a feast or famine kind of guy. Like he either has a great game or he's a guy that's you don't know if he was a healthy scratch or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's just that's what you get in free agency. You want a perfect player, you got to draft them. They're not going to be available if they're perfect. People don't let perfect players go. Let's be honest here. Next up is our old friend, our buddy, our pal, who I really don't want to see. I know, listen, every year until he retires, we're going to have this discussion whenever he's a free agent. Odell Beckham Jr., now 31 years old. I believe the oldest player we have on this list. He is 14 games last year, 35 catches, 565 yards, 3 touchdowns. For his career, 5-time 1,000-yard season guy. 3 times he's been a season of more than 10 touchdowns. Has not had a 1,000-yard season or a 10-touchdown season since 2019. And guys, we're going into 2024. His best years are behind him. Let's call it like it is. Yeah, it's his best years are behind him. Now, if you can get me a guy that's going to be consistently 500-600 yards and not cause a headache and be a good mentor, then I'm okay with it. I have confidence in 2 out of those 3 with him.
I was going to say
2 out of the 3, and the headache is definitely the one that I'm not confident on. So, the big thing is, are you going to be a Meatloaf fan and say 2 out of 3 ain't bad? Or are you going to say, you know what? This guy has got too much of an ego still. This guy wants too much money still. He's just not worth it.
I'm not paying for Meatloaf to come to this venue.
Yeah. Because you don't want to get Meatloaf when you're paying for, Beef Bourguignon or something like that. Because that's what happened to the Ravens last year. They paid him like a top receiver, and the top receiver was Zay Flowers, not him. But by all accounts, he was a good mentor to Zay Flowers. That's the word that you got to look at that too. But again, he starts getting in a fight with kicking nets or talking trash about his quarterback again, and then you just don't want to deal with him. And at 31, it's kind of like, and obviously you don't hear it anymore. Finally, I think this is the first year we didn't actually hear it even. Like T.O., let's talk about T.O. Like, this is a guy who was one of the most talented receivers to ever play the game. But it got to the point where his head caseness outweighed his ability. And OBJ, I feel like, has had that happen already to him to a certain degree. He's not as big a head case as T.O. I'm just using his example because he's also not as good a player as T.O., if we're going to be honest. Started out as good, but, just the injuries kind of killed him. But T.O. could have played for many, many years if he just wasn't an idiot. He's the guy who could have potentially gone for Jerry Rice's record if he wasn't an idiot. But he is an idiot. And OBJ has also done some idiotic things. And now he's hanging out with the Kardashians and everything. I mean, do you really want this headache?
No.
Do you want this media personality circus? And there's going to be guys, you say no, but I'm telling you right now, half the people listening are like, oh, yeah, let's get him.
OBJ.
He's not the old OBJ. He's not the old OBJ. He's not the old OBJ, guys.
Yeah.
And if I thought he changed mentally, I'd be all for it. It'd be a nice story. I don't think he's changed mentally at all. So, next up, this is a dark horse candidate for me that I would actually really enjoy seeing. I think he'd be an interesting pick for us here. And a guy that people forget about in Cincinnati, Tyler Boyd. 29 years old. So, again, one of the more older guys here. 17 games last year, 67 receptions, 667 yards, 2 touchdowns, had 1,000-yard receiving seasons back in 18 and 19. Now, again, I'm saying that when I just said it's been 5 years when we talked about OBJ. The big difference is OBJ has gone to places where he's been the top receiver. He was supposed to be the top receiver for the Ravens. He was supposed to be the second receiver for the Rams. I'll give him that half a season. He was supposed to be the top receiver for the Browns. Tyler Boyd is a third receiver on this team.
Yeah, I mean, he's also behind, Chase and.
Oh yeah. Listen, if you're going to be behind 2 people, that's one of the better duos to be behind.
100%.
As a third receiver, that's the numbers he's been putting up. And it's not just last year because of all the injuries they've had. If you look at his stats there overall, his stats, that's what they've been, guys. That's what he's been putting up as a third receiver. He's so 762 in 22, 828 in 21, 841 in 20, 1,046 in 19, 1,028 in 18. This is a guy who has consistently put up numbers. He's got 6,000 receiving yards in his career, guys. 6,000. It's a lot. So I honestly think that this is a guy that I think if he went elsewhere, you would see him be a 1,000-yard type of receiver potentially again, because he's going to get that much more volume. and he's proven he can do it against top-end talent. It's been a couple of years, but he's proven in the past he can do it. This is the guy that I think you're going to pay him $10 million and get $15 million production out of. We want to talk about a smart bet kind of investment. This is that guy. If you can't get one of the top tier guys, this would be my top of the tier B guys to go get.
I agree.
Next up, interesting guy. We've seen him plenty of times playing for the Commanders. Curtis Samuel, still just 27 years old. I can't believe it. I thought he was much older too, this guy. 16 games last year, 62 receptions, 613 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's had 3 seasons, though, keep in mind, also over 130 rushing yards in the season. So he's another guy like Wan'Dale and all that can be split out the backfield as a running back occasionally. Had 1,000 total yard season back in 2020. We kept on signing these type of players nonstop last year. If they decide to go that route, could do worse than Curtis Samuel. Could do worse than taking a big weapon away from a team that you play twice a year, even though we have no problem beating them. Sounds weird saying that. It's the only team we have no problem beating.
But say,
yeah. But like I said, not my top guy. He's number 10 by PFF's ranking even, but he's a guy. He's a legit receiver.
He's a dude.
He's a legit weapon. Could do worse. So, we got the rest here. It's going to give you guys a list of honorable mention guys. Kendrick Bourne, 28 years old, 406 yards, played with the Patriots last year. DJ Shark from the Panthers, 27 years old, 525. Michael Thomas, remember that name back in the day. Saints, 30 years old, 448 yards last season. Josh Reynolds with the Lions, 28 years old, 608 yards. Nick Westbrook Akeen from the Titans, 370 yards. And KJ Osborne, the Vikings, 26 years old, 540 yards. The last one, Noah Brown from the Texans, 28 years old, 567 yards, and a Jersey native. So plenty of guys that we can go out and get that would be an improvement to what we got over there. But just a handful of guys who have that number one potential. So something to keep an eye on this free agency, because what we do there is going to determine what we do, guys, in the draft. So let's get into the guys that we could look to draft early on, potentially, if we want to go that route to get a number one wide receiver. But before we do that, we're going to pay the bills real quick. Oh, yes.
Enjoying the show? Looking for more goofball action? Consider a membership at buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs. Memberships start at just $5 and give you additional goofball access. One-time support payments also available starting at just $3. buymeacoffee.com/2giantgoofballs.
Oh, yes. And on to the draft, guys, here. Here's the people that we could potentially look to draft. And again, I'm trying to focus on top-end talent here because I feel like we have mid-tier guys. We can easily get bottom-tier guys. What we're missing is a top 1-2 guy. That's what we're missing. The biggest name, obviously, in this whole entire draft at the receiver position is Marvin Harrison Jr. at Ohio State. PFF ranks him as number 2 overall talent on this entire draft board. 21 years old, 6'4", 205 pounds. Considered an elite athlete and prospect by many. He's interesting is he's 4 inches taller and 20 pounds bigger than his dad. Of course, Marvin Harrison Sr., the longtime Colt, I believe Hall of Famer as well, right? I mean, I assume he's in the Hall of Fame. He should be in the Hall of Fame. If not, Junior's technique is considered practically flawless. Again, obviously, he had some good teachers in his life. And most expect him to easily slip right into the wide receiver number 1 position. The big thing is we're probably not going to have a shot in hell of getting him at number 6. Let's be very frank here.
Probably not.
He's been the first non-quarterback probably taken off the board, which means we will not have a chance
in
to get
every
him.
Mock draft.
Yeah. So I include him in this, but I don't think we'll have a shot in hell of having him. Malik Neighbors, LSU, PFF ranks number 4 overall, 20 years old, 6 foot even, 201 pounds. Great route runner with absolutely flawless body control in the air. He's considered someone who will also be a number 1 wide receiver in this league here. Now, that's the guy I've seen a lot of people, put us at there. If the top 3 quarterbacks are gone, guys, and you want to not trade down, you're probably going to look to take the top receiver available, just based on who's based on need and talent level. And this is a legit guy that you're going to see, and you'll see. We'll talk about him when we go into actually the wide receiver draft previews and stuff a lot more. But this is a guy that's a legitimate chance at number 6 here. Another guy that's also a legitimate chance at number 6 is Rome Odunze out of Washington. Michael Penix Jr.'s favorite target there. PFF ranks him overall at number 7 on their board. So again, at 6, that's a legitimate guy that I think you could look at there. 21 years old, 6'3", 216 pounds. Great combo with speed, strength, and size. And again, somebody who is expected to potentially be in wide receiver number 1 in this league. And probably those 3 are the big 3 as far as people that we go, you know what? These are people that should slip into wide receiver 1. After that, I think there's a pretty decent drop off there. Brian Thomas Jr. at LSU. PFF ranks him number 21 on their board overall. 21 years old, 6'4", 205 pounds. So great size, that's for sure. He's also got elite speed. Yeah, he's got elite speed as well. And he's great at deep routes, but needs to work on his route tree overall if he's going to reach, big time potential. Kind of much like Jalen Hyatt we talked about there. Another guy that has a very similar outlook, Troy Franklin out of Oregon. PFF ranks him 26 overall, 21 years old, 6'3", 187 pounds. So definitely a lot smaller than Thomas, but similar. Now he's another vertical threat that needs to work on diversifying his routes overall to work better in an NFL-style offense there. Another really tiny little guy. He almost reminds me of Tank Dell.
Wee man.
He's that tiny. Lab McConkey over at Georgia, the Georgia Bulldog there. PFF ranks him 31 overall. So now we're starting to get into guys that could be, second-round options here for us. 22 years old, 6 foot even, 185 pounds. A very, very, good receiver at Georgia. Lacks quick speed, though, which is weird for a guy. You expect a guy that tiny to do that. But he's very timely with his routes overall, and he's potentially the best route runner in the draft overall. And that's what he counts on. Quick change of speed, that kind of thing, which makes you think, obviously, he's going to be probably a slot guy in the NFL. Devontae Walker out of North Carolina. PFF ranks him 34 overall, 22 years old. Perfect NFL size, 6'2", 200 pounds. Very raw, though. Played 2 seasons at Kent State and the last season over at North Carolina. Looked great at times, but did not look great in the Senior Bowl this last week or two there, where we got to see a lot of hands-on with him against other people, and that definitely hurt his stock. But again, if you're someone who needs a wide receiver 1, and you're somebody who can wait a year or 2 maybe to develop a guy, this is a guy you might look at saying, okay, he's got great size. I've seen great potential out of him. Let's not put too much on him. Let's develop him for a year or 2 and then get him going in there. A team like Cincinnati, for example, that might, potentially lose 1 or 2 of their receivers, could be a good option for him, I think. Keon Coleman out of Florida State Seminoles there, 20 years old, 6'4", 216 pounds. Another guy with some great size there. Just an absolute great strength and speed combo, too, as well. He's a guy that, again, you look at him as potentially a wide receiver 2, but he could sneak into that wide receiver 1 conversation there. I think he's a little overlooked coming out of the ACC there. Adonai Mitchell out of Texas, 21 years old, 6'4", 196 pounds. The lanky guy there. Great combo there of height and great route running, and he's proven to be an elite red zone threat in college. So if you're looking for a guy specifically for that, which, let's be honest, the Giants have had trouble scoring, this is the guy that does exactly that kind of role there. Xavier Legette, this guy we've actually mocked to us before in some of our mock drafts there, 23 years old, 6'3", 227 pounds. Wasn't really thought of very highly until this past season here. But he's shown great work at the catch point and the jump ball situation there. And it also improved a lot in the yak as well. So this is a guy that out of nowhere this year kind of came out, and now he's getting to that conversation of like a second round kind of pick area there. So I like seeing guys improve. That's always something I like. And he's got the size that we need on this team as well, because we got a bunch of little guys there. So another guy that I think might be considered there in the second round if we do not get one in the first round. So obviously, like I said, we'll give you guys a full rundown of the wide receivers in the draft later on. When we get closer to the draft. We did that last year for you guys. We will do it again. So, who knows? Maybe we can help find the next Puka Nacua. We were high on him in the last year. So yeah. Never know. But we'll go ahead and do that for you guys later on. So keep an eye on that there overall. But yeah, that right there's our state of the wide receiver room. So again, not a very good room right now. We're going to lose a couple of guys in Paris Campbell, and we're going to lose Sterling Shepard. Who knows what's going to happen yet as far as Isaiah Hodgins there. But we got a couple spots we got to fill there. So we just went over all the top wide receiver free agents and draft options there. Let us know in the comments who you liked. Tell us who you think. Well, what would you do if you're Joe Shane? What would you do?
Oh, was it WWSD? What would Shane do?
Yes. What would Joe Shane do? Let us know. And, again, even though this one is not shot live like most episodes are, guys, keep in mind that we always pop in the comments. We will respond. So put your comments in. Let us know what your thoughts are overall on the wide receivers that are available, the wide receivers we have. We want to hear from you guys there. We'll be back again for you guys tomorrow night, Thursday night. They're live at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The plan right now is to go through the tight ends here, unless any big breaking news happens, but I don't see anything that happening anytime soon here. They were to hit a low for the next couple of weeks. We can get through the rest of these state of the team videos we have to go through here. So, like I said, tight ends next. So be on the lookout for Thursday night for that. Like I said, again, unless anything else breaks. As always, we are live. Well, I should say, as always, we're not technically live now; it's recorded. But as always, the episodes at least premiere live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram, and of course, actually, no, not this one, but Instagram. But I keep on forgetting that they need to up the game on Instagram. Why Facebook? I can do it live like that, but I can't on Instagram. Boo Instagram, boo you.
Yeah.
And of course, Rob's favorite
LinkedIn page.
Oh yes, my LinkedIn profile, and of course, the next day we're always available on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, all the fun ones there. If you don't get a chance to watch us live and want to listen to the recordings afterwards, there on your nice long drive to work or something. There, I know Rob's got a long drive. He's on the road for 17 hours a day. It feels like. Yeah, exactly. Appreciate you guys listening as always. And like I said, we'll see you guys again tomorrow night for a live episode here. As always, Giant fans, we appreciate you listening in. And as always,
go G-Man!
Go G-Man! Go G-Man! G-Man!
Thanks for listening to Two Giant Goofballs, a New York Giants podcast. We appreciate your support.
Thanks so much.